fundamentally, there are only two important functions in a company. Somebody's got to make it and somebody's got to sell it. And that's Apple. Steve Wozniak makes it, Steve Jobs sells it. And everything else you can hire or you could postpone. If you cannot make it as an engineer, you better be good in sales.
Meet Guy Kawasaki,
former Chief Evangelist at Apple,
renowned keynote speaker,
and best-selling author.
Founders should understand that the purpose of a company is to create customers. It's not to get funded. It's not to write business plans, make PowerPoint pitches. It's not to form strategic partnerships. Everything should be about creating customers. And what's the primary way you create a customer? Well, I hate to tell you, but that's what you should be focusing on, not all the bullshit strategic stuff you're thinking about.
Welcome to another episode of Unlock Your Potential. This is Jeff Lerner, your host. Always so excited to be back having amazing conversations with amazing humans. Today is one for the books. We are joined by Guy Kawasaki, someone that I have been tuning into for, I told him earlier, it's been at least 20 years. It might be longer. I don't know. When I think of people I started tuning into, when I started tuning into people, I think of Guy Kawasaki. In terms of business, entrepreneurship, thought leadership, all those things. If you don't know who Guy is, he's the Chief Evangelist at Canva, creator of the Remarkable People podcast. He's also dabbles as a college professor at some various institutions. I think probably really came to prominence as the Chief Evangelist of Apple back in the day. I think a close working partner with Steve Jobs during Apple's amazing emergence as kind of the Apple we know today. Guy, if you don't know Guy, I would question where you've been hiding and why, but also change that because there aren't a lot of guys with a deeper wealth of sort of insider knowledge around entrepreneurship, technology, trends, and all those good things. Guy, welcome to the show.
Gee, that's the hell of an intro. Oh my God, I got to live up to that now.
Well, yeah, we like to set a high bar, but honestly, do you dispute any of it?
Well, I wouldn't say I was a close buddy of Steve Jobs. I was not in the inner circle, but that's why I survived.
Oh, all right. Well, there you go. Yeah. So, here's the thing. I've known of you for so long. A lot of it is apocryphal. I'm excited to have a chance to really hear how it was, but I certainly know of your time at Apple, and really, correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe this is a place to start as good as any, that Chief Evangelist concept. Was that not something that was sort of pioneered at that time? Were you the first Chief Evangelist? I don't want to speak out of turn, but.
Well, there was Jesus before me, but yeah, there was a 2,000-year gap. So actually, I started as the second software evangelist for the Macintosh division back in 1983. And my job was to convince companies to write Macintosh software and create Macintosh hardware peripherals. And the reason why we called the title evangelist is because we wanted to convince people to, sort of join our religion, to see our philosophy of WYSIWYG, graphical user interface, empowerment of the individual, all that kind of good stuff. And so I was first a software evangelist. I did that for about 4 years. I left and I came back as Chief Evangelist. And, evangelism comes from a Greek word meaning bringing the good news. And so I brought the good news of Macintosh, that it would make people more creative and more productive. And now I'm Chief Evangelist of Canva, and I'm bringing the good news that Canva has democratized design so that anybody can be a better communicator.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that Chief Evangelism concept. I in my business, I guess I'm technically the CEO. That we haven't redefined it as an acronym for our purposes, but honestly, evangelism would fit a lot better than executive.
Yeah,
for me, because I think that's, I almost feel like, why wouldn't you want to be an evangelist with your work? If not, why haven't you found work that you care more about, that you want to evangelize, right?
Well,
Like,
I mean, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but that I don't want people to presuppose that, the work is always the center of your life. I mean, other people have other centers of their lives, right? It could be their family. It could be, single mom, single dad, taking care of 2 or 3 generations. So, yeah, I mean, some people just need to put, food on the table, and then they have other, artistic interests or family interests or, musical, who knows? I'm not judging those people.
Yeah. I guess we'd all like to be, we'd like to think that we're the chief evangelist for something in our life.
Yes.
Even if it's not our career. Okay. So I feel like, gosh, we have like 40 minutes and I have about 40 hours worth of things that I would like to talk about and ask you. So maybe we could start at, you have a new book out, Think Remarkable, which I can't help but connect maybe as a reference to Think Different. It seems like okay. Yes. So maybe start there. Tell us about the new book.
Well, the new book is called Think Remarkable, and I have this podcast called Remarkable People, and I have now about 250 episodes. So that means there's 250 hours and 5,000 pages of transcripts, and nobody's going to read that or listen to all that. So we decided to put the best of into a book, because we have talked to truly remarkable people, from Jane Goodall, Stacey Abrams, Christy Yamaguchi. Let's see, Andrew Zimmern, Angela Duckworth, Carol Dweck, Bob Cialdini, David Acker. I mean, you name it. Stephen Wolfram. We've had multiple MacArthur Award winners, well, not actually, we only had 1 Nobel Prize winner, but we have truly remarkable guests.
And so you took, what'd you say, sort of the best of that and turned it into a book?
Yes. So this book is really about 180 pages long. So we took 5,000 pages and cut it down to 180.
So how would you like, what's the elevator pitch, would you say, for the book?
Well, the elevator pitch is, if you want to be remarkable, you can learn from remarkable people. And this is the fastest way you can do that.
So who would you say are some of the most remarkable people that you've had on the show and or featured in the book?
Well, certainly Jane Goodall is right up there. Steve Wozniak.
Who I noticed Jane Goodall wrote the foreword.
Yeah. I mean, can it get any better than that, right?
Yeah.
So we have Jane Goodall, Angela Duckworth, Stephen Wolfram, the MacArthur Fellow, youngest MacArthur Fellow, Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, Stacey Abrams, the activist from Georgia. I mean, I could just go on for a long time about my remarkable guests.
So yeah, it sounds like a something I should just immediately go read. Is there an audio version?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
Good. That's how I consume most literature these days. So you've written, how many books have you written?
This is my 16th.
16th book. Okay. Yeah. You must get up very early in the morning.
Yeah. I get up early in the morning and I work hard and I'm old. If you put those 3 things together, you can do 16 books.
Yeah. I guess that's a lot of hours. Why do you keep churning out books? I'm curious, at this point in your career, what do you view as the intent behind the books? Is it just giving, or is there something more?
Or is there something less, like big advances? I mean,
oh, okay, fair enough.
No, listen, the 16th book, and listen, I wrote my first book called The Macintosh Way in 1987. And at that time, when I finished that book, I thought, oh, Guy, this is it. You said everything you want to say. There'll never be another book. And I've said that 15 times now. So much for my credibility about that. And I write a book when I have something to say, as opposed to some people who just write a book because they want to use it as a means to an end. Well, if you want to consider my book as a means to the end, the end I'm after is that I want a historical record of how I changed the world and helped people change the world. So I want to be remembered for empowering people, not for a building, not for a, professorship, not for a stadium, not for, anything like that. I want to be known for helping people change the world.
And that's, presumably that's why you took the Canva gig.
Well, the Canva gig was 10 years ago, and I love the product. And so I tend to make decisions based on, do you love the product? It's true with Macintosh. It's true with Canva. I fall in love with stuff, fall in love with podcasting, fall in love with writing. And then I wish I could tell you I had this grand plan that I would scope out my life, but it's not true. I mean, I just go from one kind of interest that I scratch that becomes a passion, and sometimes it even becomes, the Japanese word is called Ikigai, which is kind of the reason for getting up in the morning.
Ikigai is, as I understand it, the convergence of things we love, things we're good at, things the world needs, and things we get paid for.
Well, I tell you something, I understand that definition. And when people hear that definition, they think, okay, so this is really practical and tactical, right? Because I'm good at it. I like to do it, and I can make money. That sounds like a magical kind of job, but I have a slightly different interpretation of your Ikigai. When you are involved with your Ikigai, it doesn't matter if you're good at it, and it doesn't matter if you can make money at it. You just love to do it. So a true test of an Ikigai is that you're not that good at it, and you cannot make money yet, and you're not that good yet, but you still want to dedicate your life to it. That's a much harder test, and I think a truer test.
Interesting. So, yeah, I mean, I'm obviously in the sort of entrepreneurial / personal development kind of evangelism space. Yep. And we have these frameworks that we, glom onto and throw around. And that's the standard of that one. It's that sort of quadrant model. And then it's, the intersection of these four bubbles. I've literally never heard somebody actually correlate Ikigai to basically say, yeah, scrap the part about, like, nobody's hiring for your Ikigai. Forget about that. Just you're really tying it more to sort of this almost like just an all-consuming passion.
Yes. And you know what? I mean, listen, not everybody's Ikigai is lucrative. I mean, so, I think you're setting yourself up for failure if you believe that your Ikigai has to be lucrative. And I know many people who are artists and writers and, creative things like that. And they're not making a lot of money doing it, but they're still doing it. That's the real test of Ikigai. When you cannot make money doing it, but you still do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to go back to the drawing board on my conception of Ikigai and probably rework some of my content too.
Well, I mean, but take it easy, Jeff. I mean, this is just one guy saying it's not. It's not like I'm McKinsey and I'm telling you got to change your magic quadrant.
That's fair. So, what is it, so what would you say is yours? What words would you put to your Ikigai?
What words? I mean, what is my Ikigai now?
Yeah, how would you describe it?
I would say that I have two Ikigais right now. So one is podcasting, and the other is surfing. And I can tell you that I am not that good at surfing. I will never make money surfing, and I surf every day and love it. So it passes the test. Now, podcasting, yeah, all modesty aside, I'm a good podcaster, but I have absolutely no sponsors or advertisers. And so podcasting passed the Ikigai test, the Guy Ikigai test, because I'm not making money podcasting, and I still do it every week. Every week we released a new episode, and you're a podcaster, so you know that there's a lot of expenses. It's not just, turn on the record button on Zoom. So I figured that each episode, when you count everything, the sound design and the social media graphics and just everything, yeah, double checking the transcript, all that kind of stuff, I bet you it cost me $1,000 or $1,500 per episode. And so that's let's call it $1,500. So it cost me $1,500 for each episode of my podcast, and I have no revenue. So I must be nuts.
Well, I'll tell you, I've been doing this show for, I don't know, for 3.5 years now. I'm at 320 episodes or something.
Yeah.
I've never actually added it up, but you have a big enough name that at least, I mean, frankly, you probably get guests showing up just to go, oh, I want to go on Guy's podcast. I have a booking agent that has to go find folks like yourself and say, oh, let me tell you about this Jeff Lerner guy. I mean, so even if I pile that on, I'm multiple six figures deep into this thing. But I don't do ads and I don't do sponsorships, and I think maybe it's my Ikigai or one of them, because I love it.
We need to start Podcasters Anonymous.
Yeah, right. But I will say, and maybe this is a functional difference for you and me, but I mean, just the relationships. Well, I mean, I told you, I've been reading your thought leadership or consuming your material for over 20 years, but thanks to this podcast, I actually get to talk to you. So, I mean,
yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean,
different types of value.
I think that one of the benefits, you're a young guy, so it's not relevant to you yet, but I have 52 episodes a year. And so 52 times I have to be knowledgeable enough about a subject to have a very detailed discussion with, and it could be spinal injury. It could be influence and persuasion. It could be, Andrew Zimmern about bizarre foods. It could be Angela Duckworth about grit, and Carol Dweck about growth, and Martha Stewart or Margaret Atwood. These are all my guests, right? Mm-hmm. And so 52 times a year, I have to understand whatever they're doing. So I convince myself that this is at least delaying and hopefully preventing dementia in Guy. That's worth a lot of money.
That's a novel approach for sure. So, okay, I mean, you have a pretty illustrious list of friends and conversations and podcast guests and, collaborators in your career. I'm curious, who are some of the people that, who would you say are some of the people that you've really learned or been impacted by the most?
Well, certainly, I think that Jane Goodall is the most remarkable person who's alive today. And I think she's just her grace and graciousness, and the fact that she's 90 years old and she's still working her butt off to save the world. I mean, it's just very inspiring. And from like Bob Cialdini, I mean, you must be familiar with Bob Cialdini, right? And so when you talk to Bob and he says, okay, see, these are like 10 or 12 ways you can influence and persuade people that I would have never thought of. Right? I mean, he's like a walking marketing, genius. Mm-hmm. And it just goes on and on. I learn everything from my guests.
Do you have a plan from here for your life? Or are you just kind of going until you feel different?
I could just keep going till I die. I have never been a big planner, of my life. And, I fell in love with computers, and then I fell in love with internet, fell in love with social media, fell in love with podcasting. I fell in love with writing along the way. I took up surfing because of my kids. I took up hockey because of my kids. And, if you had told me, go back in time at 18 and say, okay, Guy, let's plan out your life. Let's, make the architectural plans for your life. I basically have thrown the plan away. I mean, I went to law school for 2 weeks and quit. I'm living proof that, you don't need a plan.
Okay. So how old were you when you quit law school?
Let's see. I graduated from Stanford in 1976. So I was 22 at the time. So 23 or so.
Okay. And when did you, what was your first job?
Depends how you define job. You mean your first job after school or, during school at high school and all that?
Yeah, let's start at the beginning. First job.
Well, I think the very first job was I was a truck driver's helper for a construction firm in Hawaii. And what we would do is we would take all the posts and the plywood and the shingles and stuff, and we would deliver them to the job site where the carpenters built the house. So we were the people who dropped off all the materials for carpenters and, the builders of the home. So that was my very first job.
Are you from Hawaii originally?
I am from Hawaii.
Okay. That was your first job. When did you come to the mainland for college?
I came to the mainland in 1972 because I went to college.
Okay.
Yes.
So you came here. What was your first job out of college?
My first job out of college. Well, after college, I went to law school for 2 weeks, as I said, and I dropped out of that. So I went back to Hawaii, and I worked for the Lieutenant Governor of Hawaii when he was creating the Hawaii Commission on Crime. And then the following year, I went back to UCLA to get my MBA, and that's a 4-day-a-week job. So I had a 5th day free, and I come from a lower middle income family, so I wanted to work for spending money. So I started working for a jewelry company, literally counting diamonds. And after that job, I graduated and I worked for that company, and then I went to a software company, and then I went to Apple.
I noticed, I don't remember where I read it, but it was some sort of literature around the book that you did have some early experience in sales. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you tell me about that?
Yes. So my early experience in sales came from the jewelry company. This company was a jewelry manufacturer, not a retailer. Mm-hmm. So we sold jewelry to retailers, the Tiffany's of the world. And the jewelry business is a very rough and tumble, hand-to-hand combat business. It's, when people talk about sales today, they always think about e-commerce. And, we do this A/B test. And is the purple link, result in more clicks than the blue link? And, is the dark background better than a light background? And, what's the optimal subject line? I mean, it was nothing like that. It was begging for an appointment, waiting in a store for 2 hours, opening up your case and getting 15 minutes and, the person not giving you an order. I mean, that was the nature of hand-to-hand combat, wholesale jewelry. And it was a great experience. It taught me how to sell.
Yeah. How long did you do that?
I worked there for a couple of years while I was getting my MBA. Then I worked for 4 or 5 more years after I graduated with my MBA.
Yeah, I saw an article, I don't remember if it was HBR or what, but it was about, basically it was about really successful executives and how they got their starts. And if I remember correctly, I think sales was the biggest category. It's sort of shifted now with, because a lot of tech founders obviously start as developers, but generally across the broad range of industries, that sales is kind of the best foundational training for leadership in general.
I tell young people, fundamentally, there are only 2 important functions in a company. Somebody's got to make it and somebody's got to sell it. And that's Apple, right? So Steve Wozniak makes it, Steve Jobs sells it. And everything else you can hire, or you could postpone, or you can skip, or, there's some other way around it. But fundamentally, you got to make it and you got to sell it. So if you cannot make it as an engineer, you better be good in sales.
Got to make it, got to sell it. Yeah, I guess it doesn't really get much simpler than that. Okay, so let me ask you this, different question. Best salesperson you've ever known?
The best salesperson I've ever known.
And I want to know who it was, and I want to know what made him so great.
Huh. Well, there was a guy who worked for this jewelry manufacturing company, and my God, that guy could sell. And you know what? He just like relentless and doesn't give up, doesn't get bent out of shape by rejection, and kind of a guy you would look forward to seeing all the time. I mean, personable and all that. He was a great salesperson.
So what made him so great, you're saying, was that he was just just kind of phlegmatic, like hard to, you couldn't shake him, or?
Well, you couldn't shake him, but okay, so when you hear somebody described as you couldn't shake him, you think, oh, pain in the ass, right? But he was he was somebody you couldn't shake, but he was a teddy bear that you couldn't shake. He wasn't like a piranha you couldn't shake.
Right.
He was a teddy bear.
Yeah, I guess what I meant was like you couldn't rattle him.
Yeah.
Like he was unflappable. Okay, I know we're kind of bouncing around. Like I said, I've got 400 hours worth of questions, 40 minutes to ask them. I'm curious. Can I ask? Do you have a family?
Yeah, I have 4 kids and a wife.
4 kids. Do you have grandkids?
I have one in the chute that is, 6/9 done.
Okay. So then, yeah, that's perfect. So when you think about your 2/3 cooked grandkid, what advice would you give him or her?
Well, it is a him. We know that for sure. I don't think I would change my advice for my kids or my grandkids. I think that, a couple lessons. So number one, that the world doesn't owe you anything. You have to earn what you get is number one. Number two would be never ask people to do something you wouldn't do. If you won't do it, don't expect people to do it. And number three is you should always take the high road and give people the benefit of the doubt. Don't look for trouble. Plenty of trouble is going to find you. You don't need to go find trouble. And I guess maybe the last piece of advice is that, for my sons in particular, when you get married, just whatever your wife asks you to do, you drop everything and do that first.
All right. I'll align around all of those, but especially the last one. Okay, then next up, I'll say, give me some what was the time span that you worked at Apple?
I worked from 1983 to 87 and 1995 to 1997.
83 to 87, 95 to 97. So I'm kind of I would say a dilettante in Apple history. It's a fascinating company to me, and I was a musician in a past life. So we were early adopters of Apple products, the musicians, right?
The MIDI stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been using a Mac since, I don't even remember, since certainly the 90s, probably mid 90s. Probably when you were there for your second stint, I was finishing high school and probably getting my first Mac to hook my MIDI interface up to my keyboard.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what platform was that. Was Logic the audio software back then, or is that? It was Cubase.
Cubase?
No, Cubase.
How about Macromind Director or something like that? No.
Yeah, I think you're right. Logic came later. Cubase. Anyways, okay, so not relevant. But curious. Talk to me about Apple in the 80s. Like paint me the picture.
Okay, paint you a picture. It was Apple in the 80s was the blind lead the blind. And it was like being paid to go to Disneyland because we were led by Steve Jobs. And, he had us all drinking a Kool-Aid and convinced that we had to prevent the end of the world and the end of democracy and the end of freedom. And that if we didn't make Macintosh a success, that 1984 and George Orwell would actually come true and there'd be thought police and, it would just be the shits. So we truly did believe that. We thought we're saving the world.
And do you think, I mean, he sincerely believed that? You don't think that was just a motivational technique?
Well, if it was, quote, just a motivational technique, he sure did it well, my God.
So what was his like reasoning to connect the success of the Macintosh product to the, preservation of individual liberties or whatever?
Well, I mean, by his view that if we didn't have good personal computers, so one person, one computer, as opposed to a dumb terminal,
right?
And this dumb terminal is controlled by the brains at the central location by the MIS department and the IT department. So if we had centralized computing, we'd have thought control and brain control and the lack of freedom and democracy. So in order to prevent this, we had to have personal computers that you could carry, that you could lift, that you could boot, that you could upgrade, that you could use without, Big Brother telling you what to do.
How much do you think Apple's success correlated to or even depended on that sort of deeper, like, principled, almost spiritual foundation for the reasoning behind the product? How much do you think it needed that level of dogma?
100%. 100%. I mean, listen, nobody ever bought a Macintosh because it was the safe purchase or because, MIS required it or it was, the corporate standard. You bought a Macintosh, despite these kind of rules. So you had to truly be a believer. That's why we were evangelists, not third party,
Yeah.
Third party, I don't know, managers or coordinators or advocates or whatever. We were evangelists. We were trying to sell a religion.
How much do you think that's still, like, was that a unique truth of Apple, or do you think there's something fundamental and essential about that still that's as true today as it was then, and it's ubiquitous, not just unique to one or two?
Yeah, well, I think back then, the concept that someone would be an evangelist or have evangelist on his business card or her business card, that was completely foreign. I mean, it was like, what does evangelism have to do with a secular computer company, right? So back then, that's true. Now, there are many companies who have quote-unquote evangelists now, and I think that's all kind of an offshoot of what Apple did. I'm still an Apple customer. I have iPhones, iPads, iPods. I mean, Macintoshes, multiple, I have like 3 or 4 Macs myself. And so I'm still, Apple. You can take the evangelist out of Apple, but you can't take the Apple out of the evangelist. But I have to say, I have not worked for the company in many, many years, since 1997. So I'm not a good person to judge what it's like there now. But they still continue to put good stuff out. But then I also got to tell you, I mean, they put stuff out that I just totally shake my head. And, I'll give you a simple example. So do you use AirTags?
Do I use AirTags? No, I don't, actually.
Okay.
But
well,
I know plenty of people who do.
Okay. So you ask these people who use AirTags and you ask them, how hard is it to change the battery on an AirTag? And I swear to God, the person who figured out that, we make this shiny metal back and you twist it counterclockwise and, hopefully your fingers don't slide off and it'll turn and you could take it off. Then you put the battery in and then you spend the next 5 minutes trying to figure out how do you tighten it back? And I mean, it's just, this happens to be top of mind because I'm changing all our batteries right now. It's like unbelievable. I went online and somebody said, oh, you need to get surgical gloves. That way your fingers won't slip. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? You're telling me that Steve Jobs intended that people buy surgical gloves to change a battery? That ain't happening.
That's funny. So maybe let's jump forward to Canva a little bit. I mean, I don't know if Canva is considered the same magnitude of story as Apple, but I mean, probably in terms of like growth rate, it probably, I mean, Canva's been pretty freaky unicorn.
Yes,
so,
it has. Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, how'd you get linked up with them?
I got linked up with Canva. You're going to love this story. I mean, people probably think, oh, yeah, Guy could have picked any company. He did research on thousands of companies, and he selected the company that had the great management team, the great market potential, and the great technology. And, he went through this like extensive McKinsey-esque kind of analysis, big data and all that. I hate to burst your bubble, but back when Twitter was started, I jumped on Twitter and I had this theory that every tweet should come with a picture or a video. So the person I was working with, her name is Peg Fitzpatrick. We used to do tweets all the time. We used to always have to have a picture. She found Canva and was using Canva to create graphics. And Canva figured out that I was using Canva because it had a particular look back then. So they reached out to me and they said, Guy, we see you using Canva. We're going to be in the U.S. soon. Can we get together and talk? And so I went to Peg. I said, Peg, isn't Canva what we use? She said, yeah. I said, you like it? She said, yeah. I said, you think I should help that company? She said, yeah. And the rest is history. That was my due diligence. That's how I found them, or more accurate, they found me.
When was that?
This is 10 years ago.
10 years ago. So let's see, it's 2014. When did, where was Canva in its growth cycle in 2014?
It was a guy and two guys and a gal in a garage. I mean, it started in Western Australia. Melanie and Cliff, the two original founders there, they were going to university at I don't know, University of Western Australia or some Perth University or something like that. And Melanie was teaching people how to use how to use Photoshop and Illustrator. And they started a company to help people make school yearbooks. And they found out with the tools that it's so hard to make a school yearbook if you're trying to do it with Photoshop and Illustrator. And that kind of led to this idea that, my God, we should make something like Canva that everybody can use, cloud-based, and, with lots of designs pre-done. So you're not just presented with a blank page.
Yeah, no, our company uses Canva extensively. So 2014, and Canva's private, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
When did are they venture backed?
Yes, they are very venture backed.
Okay. But they're profitable. I mean, I've heard wild, really excited, exuberant stories about how much money Canva makes, which is
awesome
for a big cloud.
They also have about I think 175 or maybe by now 200 million monthly active users. So
that's crazy.
But it's basically everybody in the world who can't use or buy Photoshop is using Canva.
Yeah, that's cool. So and you feel like this is a long haul? I mean, you're bedded down for a while there at Canva?
Yeah, this is my last job. I'm not working for anybody else. I mean, okay. I tell people, you'll love this story. So
that sounded a little bit like a plan, Guy.
I tell people that I started my career at Apple and I'm ending my career at Canva. And when you tell people that and they say, oh my God, Guy, you're so smart and, you're like making history and, you have such great taste and your ability to help companies grow and all that. But basically I figure I got lucky twice, and most people don't get lucky at all. I got lucky twice. And so Apple was in 1983, Canva was in 2014, and from the 10 20 years between, I hit a lot of singles and I struck out a lot, and I hit a lot of pop flies and I hit one or two doubles. But the way I remember my career, it's Apple and Canva. Who's going to argue with that?
Who, or what would you say are some of the more inglorious parts of your career, somewhere between the A and the C, that you learned the most from and could maybe share?
Well, as an entrepreneur, I started a couple software companies, and they were singles at best. They certainly not something that became a $1 billion business. And for a while there, not Canva, for a while there, Apple was going to be a black mark against me, right? Because Apple in like 1995 and 1990 to 1995, Apple was on the ropes and people said it's going to die. Michael Dell is telling people, Apple should give back the money it has to its shareholder and close up shop because, Windows is going to control the world. And thank God Apple succeeded after I left because now I can always claim that I was part of Apple. Yeah, that's a lot better to say I was part of Apple than I was part of, Blockbuster or
Right.
Kodak.
That's fair.
Hey there, it's Jeff. So real quick, I want to let you know about my text message community. I use text messages to provide unique value to the Unlock Your Potential community. These texts could just be random thoughts. It could be letting you be the first to know about an event I'm planning, maybe giving an update on a special I'm running or some free training that I host for my community. Anyway, just shoot me a text to get subscribed to the list. The number is 702-996-3926. Again, that is 702-996-3926. Let's get back to the podcast.
What advice do you have for aspiring founders these days? Like what's not obvious about that reality now that someone might not know?
Well, I think that, founders should understand that the purpose of a company is to create customers. It's not to get funded. It's not to write business plans, make PowerPoint pitches. It's not to form strategic partnerships. The whole goal of a company is to create customers for personal computers, customers for an online graphic design service. So everything should be about creating customers. And what's the primary way you create a customer? Well, I hate to tell you, but it is to have a product or a service. So you founders, that's what you should be focusing on, not all the bullshit strategic stuff you're thinking about and, you're blowing smoke about. You got to make it and you got to sell it. And that's all you should worry about.
I mean, it's interesting. To people that aren't part of like startup culture, when you say you got to have a product or service, I feel like people are like, yeah, duh. Like, well, of course, but I totally know what you mean. It is, there's a little bit of like a detachment from almost the ground reality of in that culture. What do you think are some companies to watch right now that, again, maybe aren't on everybody's radar?
I'm kind of disconnected from the startup scene, but, I will tell you as a market,
Okay.
I think that AI is humongous. I mean, bigger than social media, bigger than the internet, maybe bigger than the Industrial Revolution. I mean, I just think AI is so big. Now, having said that, it's kind of unlikely that two guys or two gals or a guy and a gal in a garage are going to create the Apple of AI, although maybe OpenAI is that. But, when you, like, I use AI every day, several times a day, and I can honestly tell you that I use ChatGPT, I use Gemini, I use Perplexity, I use Claude. I have very little loyalty to any of them. I have, one folder in Chrome and I just kind of, Gemini, this kind of question, or Claude, this kind of question. So I don't know how you create loyalty because, with Macintosh, when you looked at a Macintosh and you looked at MS-DOS, it was pretty clear there was a huge difference, right? Now, if you ask the same question of Claude, Perplexity, ChatGPT, and Gemini, it's not so obvious which is like the Macintosh of those answers and which is the MS-DOS of those answers. I don't know how those companies are going to do it.
Man, what a really astute point. Yeah, I mean, how do you really create like brand and differentiation?
I don't know.
Well,
I
and
mean, but I think
go ahead.
I think the great insight about AI is that people are figuring out that people don't want links. They want answers. So, if you take a question like, how do I add a HP printer to a Wi-Fi network? Before AI, you would enter that into Google and you'd get 250,000 results and, 75,000 YouTube videos. And then you say, well, which one of these videos should I look like? Which article should I read? Wired, or should I read the Washington Post, or should I read Verve or TechCrunch, or, which one do I believe? But now you ask Gemini, how do I connect an HP printer to a Wi-Fi network? And it spits out step by step what you should do and a link to, however it's decided, to what it considers the best article, which almost every time works for me. That's a very different answer than, pick from these 250,000 links to figure this out.
But you're right. How does one platform differentiate that from?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Well, listen, I'm sort of surprised to be saying this because it's flown by, but we're actually out of time. Guy, I really appreciate the time that we did get. Like I said, I had 400 hours, and so now I guess I have 399 and a third hours. We'll have to make up another time, but for the audience's benefit, where would you prefer? I mean, you're everywhere. Where would you prefer they come connect with you?
Well, I think the best work that I'm doing right now is my Substack newsletter, which comes out once a week. My podcast also comes out once a week. So between Substack and my Remarkable People podcast, you will really be on top of what Guy is on top of. Now, my book, a book takes a year to write, and I'm not going to write another book for a few years. So, my book is meant to be timeless, that it's a manual for life to be remarkable. It's not particularly tied to a time period. So I hope you use my book as a reference, but if you really want to know like the latest, greatest stuff, it's my podcast and it's Substack.
Very cool. We'll grab those links and put them in the show notes.
Oh, thank you.
Of course, man. I just have really enjoyed the time, and I'm so grateful you were able to be here. Thanks for being a guest.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. And, whenever we have 399 more hours, we can do this again. So thank you very much for having me. I'm honored. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you, Guy. Take care. And of course, to all you viewers and listeners out there, you're the best part of the show, why we do it every time. We'll catch you next time.
If you loved that episode, then you're definitely going to love this one. Check it out.
I went to bed at night with so much anxiety thinking about that red dot. Does this girl know I've never spoken in my whole life? Like, I've never given a speech before. It was like 49% worst thing I've ever done, 51% best thing I've ever done for my career. And I ended up getting on stage, and it just totally changed my life.